everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Yeah, We Read It. My name is Laura Petro, and I'm one of your hosts.
My name is Meggie Gates, and I'm your other host.
And this is the podcast where we are rereading young adult novels from our youth. Now as 20-somethings living in Chicago, we are best friends, and we are your hosts. You are catching us on part 2 of the first book of the Uglies trilogy. So we're not book 2. We're part 2 of the first book. We're just so excited about this book. And there's just so much to talk about, so we're giving you more episodes in less time.
There is, and not the most important, but also very important, Laura and I are wearing Playboy Bunny sweatpants, and we did not coordinate them.
We're so in sync all of the time, on and off the mic. That's just how it is.
Little spice that we wanted to add to your life, probably to make your Wednesday better, so you're welcome.
So we'll do a little, we left off part 1. Mm-hmm. Part 1 of the book ends with, Tally gives in to Dr. Cable, and she's like, yo, here's all your information. And Dr. Cable's like, cool, you're going to the smoke to destroy it for us, to out all these people. Mm-hmm. And Tally's like, what?
Yeah. Tally's like,
freeze frame.
Record scratch.
Wondering how I got here.
But she has to go ASAP, because if she's going to make this believable, she would have had to have left on her birthday at midnight 4 days ago. So she's got some days to make up for.
And so they give her this fancy-ass hoverboard, and they also give her a silver locket pendant.
And, most importantly, 32 packs of spaghetti. Spag bowl.
Spag bowl. We'll get to that. But the pendant they give her is a little tracker device that's only activated as a tracker when she holds it up to her eye. So she's supposed to go to the smoke and activate the tracker in the necklace.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that special circumstances really could have done easier. For example, why not just make the necklace a tracker?
Well, because then they would have found it on their bug machine, remember?
You know what? I finished this whole book and I still... Okay, that makes sense now. Okay.
But we'll get there. Because right now we have to go on Tally's journey to the smoke.
Yep, and this is when I realized why I am a pretty book person, as I will say, is because if there's nature and they're going through a journey and there's no plot or drama, then I don't pay attention.
Yeah, it was 50 pages of, very pretty scenery.
It was really pretty.
But I was, at a point I was like, okay. It was just basically her going through Shay's, clues and being like, oh, I see that this makes sense now. And then it'd be like, but I don't know what this one means. And then she'd get there and she'd be like, oh, that makes sense now. And then she'd go, but I don't know what the next line means.
I think visualizing the outdoors is very hard, especially when they start having things happen that are either a battle or they're doing something tricky or, oh no, the earth is moving and tectonic plates are shifting. Yeah. And then I get confused. If they have to explain the placement of their bodies, I can't picture anything in my head.
Yeah,
It'd be like ocean. I'd be like, ocean, okay. And then they'd be like, but I'm flying over the ocean and my left leg is angled at an 80 degree, and I'm like, you lost me.
And I started getting a little confused when she was like, she would be falling.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, is there just pits in places?
I did not know.
And then, it was, kind of explained, and I just kind of kept picturing, a deep, dark abyss, and I was like, I don't think that's what it is. I was just picturing, huge crack of blackness, and she's just plummeting down it. And I was like, that does sound scary, but I don't think that's what Scott Westerfeld meant to write.
No, absolutely not. Tally takes an 11-day journey on which it's 50 pages where we are just confused.
But the biggest, discussive question I had about this, and Meggie and I talked about this, where I was like, where in present-day U.S. is she? And I think she's on the East Coast, going up California, because she's, near the ocean.
Yes.
And then Shay later says something like, oh, if you take the wrong turn, you'd be halfway to Alaska by now, which makes me, think she's, going to Washington or something.
It makes a lot of sense that New Pretty Town would definitely be LA.
Right?
Everyone is vapid and hot there.
Exactly. Just like us.
Exactly.
Your hosts of Yeah, We Read It. Thank you for listening.
So she has to show up fast. She was supposedly left on her birthday.
And then she was given all of this spaghetti bolognese. I don't know. How do you say that? Bolognese?
I thought it was bologna.
Bolognese?
But it was spelled a fancy way.
No, it's like a type of spaghetti, like a meat sauce.
It's like bourgeois bologna.
It's you know what we're talking about, listeners. If you know, you know. So she has to like eat all of this like freeze dried spaghetti, essentially.
Yeah, and the way she's getting there is Shay left very cryptic message that was directions. And the first place she shows up to, pretty easy in the riddle. It's the roller coaster in the Rusty Ruins from the last book that is missing a track in it. So there's a gap where her hoverboard kind of stops working for a little bit because there's no metal there. And it's basically like, oh, okay, go past the gap.
Yeah.
So she keeps going past it, and then they're like, well, and then there's a metal that goes, there's a roller coaster that goes for a long time.
And it's a railroad track. And then it's just a bunch of stuff like that. And then she sees a helicopter at some point. And I wrote down in my notes being like, is this a helicopter? And then we don't find out till later that it was a helicopter. Because, like, she's never seen a helicopter before.
I do like that when she is traveling, and the first interaction that she has with the helicopter is, like, when the one where it's like, at the first gap, make the first mistake. And that was where we probably both got confused. Because she jumps off the bridge and there's something missing. And after that, she, like, lands in the river. So she's just bathing in the river one day, like, kind of naked, being like, la-di-da-di-da.
She's like, I found shampoo in my bag, yay!
And at this time where she's just, like, in my head, I'm picturing it, she's, like, bending over naked, like a little goblin woman in her river. I
pictured that, too, like, she's, like...
And the helicopter comes and is, like, whoosh! And it just, like, rattles everything around her, and she's just naked. And isn't she also drowning at the same time?
She's not drowning, she's trying to stay underwater, is at least what I read.
That makes sense.
Okay, and then the clues kind of start getting more confusing, because then she, like, is looking for, like, firebug eyes, and she takes a nap in a field of flowers, and then wakes up and the entire thing is on fire?
Yeah, exactly. And she's like, hovercraft, no, because the hovercraft is spreading the fire at the same time.
Yeah, and then she's, like, trying to run away from this, like, helicopter, but they're, like, following her, and she's, like, freaking out, because she's like, I can't get caught! And then we find out that they're, like, park rangers, and, like, this flower is deadly, because it, like, kills all the vegetation around them, so they're trying to, like, control it.
Yeah, it's a very coded, but very obvious metaphor for the entire book, because it's this thing that, I honestly don't know flowers, so maybe this is a big thing for our botany fans. But they are putting out white tiger orchids because Rusty's learned how to genetically make this rare flower plant, and they just kind of kept reproducing it, and now it's like, oh, well, this beautiful thing became such a frequent commodity, so now it's not special, and it just kind of grows like weeds.
Yeah.
And now they have like rangers to put out the weeds because it kills basically everything.
It reminds me, there's like this plant that grows on trees. It was like imported, but if it like grows on a tree, it kills like a tree instantly, so it can't grow anymore. And Nick pointed it out to me because he like watched a documentary and I was telling me all about it, and I was like, that's so sad because like there's no cure for it. Like, yeah, so it's just like they just kill all these old nice trees, and it's mean. And that's what this reminded me of.
And it said that they've been dealing with this for 300 years, which we don't really have like context or a timeline in these books, but again, this is very heavily a metaphor for the pretties, of like, you have all of this pretty thing, and then there's so much of that they have created by a man-made thing that it becomes a weed. So I'm wondering if that was around the time when things started falling apart, was like a little bit of 300 years ago, if they have rangers specifically to get rid of the white orchids.
Yeah, who knows?
I don't know.
But then she makes it to the last part of this clue where it's just like, she basically is just like asleep, is supposed to stay on this hill and wait for someone to come find her. And then she sees Shay and David and this guy Croy, which I think is a stupid name, but like also justice for Croy. He was just like, he knew something and no one believed him.
Yeah, I pictured Croy, and I feel like this explains Croy so well, with very curly red hair.
Oh, I can see it.
And a fair complexion.
Because, the first thing Croy does is like, cool, we have to, like, see if there's any bugs on you, and they find one on her hoverboard, and she's immediately like, shit, I'm caught! And they're like, no, there's trackers on every hoverboard, you're fine.
And then Croy is like, suspicious, and then just keeps pushing her, being like, is that spaghetti? Can I have all your spaghetti? Hey, how much spaghetti is in there? May I have spaghetti?
Yeah. And then, Croy's not sold on Tally.
And the spaghetti will come back because this is how much it shows he distrusted her.
Right? He's like...
He counts.
He needs a hobby.
Yeah, he counts how many days it took her to get there and then, subtracts it by how much spag bowl that she said that she had came with, and then realized that there was, less than what she said.
He was like, hey, Tally, you said it took you, 14 days to get here, but you had so much spag bowl left over, so it's like, why would you start out with 42 and end with this number? And then Tally's like, I didn't really, count the amount I bring. It was just, an estimate. And he's like, okay.
Croy's the kind of boyfriend who downloads the Flow app and then is like, babe, you're actually behaving this way because you are menstruating.
No, Croy's the guy oh, you like video games? Name 5.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
But, he was also right about her. So,
He was right, and then it seems like... Honestly, Croy is such a small part of the book, but I have so many thoughts on Croy the most for some reason.
Right? And Croy, you made an opinion about him. Him and also the boss was somebody who I felt he was described so well that, he had 2 small scenes in the book, and I was I wanted to see more of him.
I really did like the boss.
But yeah, so the first place Shay takes Tally is to see the boss. And he's not actually the boss, that's just what he calls himself. He runs the library.
Yes.
And that's where they hand out all the work assignments.
Yep. So they had traveled to where they picked Tally up, which was this big rock in this clearing. And they kind of have to travel a ways away from the rock because where they are dropped off is by pretties who were rangers. Mm-hmm. And they have to travel to the smoke. And when I saw the smoke in my head, I kind of picture an aerial view and the dust clears. And it's kind of like that hidden town in Lost, but it's the Midwest version. So instead of palm trees, there's lots of big pine trees. Everything's made out of wood. It's some little house on the prairie shit.
Yeah, see, I pictured season 1 of the 100 because they're just living straight out of the woods there. Mm-hmm. They do live in a spacecraft that crashed, but that's not in this version. So
I do forget about that sometimes too because I will picture it the town in. I'm okay, it's Pilgrim time. It's Pocahontas.
Yeah,
but it's an inclusive Pocahontas because there's no one to colonize out there except for the bunnies.
Yes. And they're colonizing the deadly orchids.
Oh, yes, exactly. Everyone is dead at this point. I don't know who's
exactly. So, the smoke just seems it reminds me just very summer camp, but forever.
Oh, yeah, that's a great way of describing it.
But yeah, and so Tally gets taken to the library, and this is when she first is now's my chance. I need to activate this, so I just don't even think about it anymore. Mm-hmm. And this little bitch spends the entire time just being I don't know if I should activate it, but I don't want to stay here, but I don't want to hurt my friend.
Oh yeah, Tally is extreme ADD, putting off the most important thing, being okay, well while I'm in the library, let me just flip through magazines.
And she goes, that's what an eating disorder was?
Yeah, that was really funny that they're this is what they talked about in school, the skinny disease, and it's just anorexia.
Yeah.
They're this is why we're all the same size. To fight this skinny disease. Also, I don't know if this was ever said in the book, but she also has a huge problem with cutting down trees.
Yeah.
And I still don't get why.
I don't know. That wasn't explained a ton. They're basically trying to... Tally gets put on the path crew. I forget what they were called. But all they're doing is remaking railroad tracks to use their hoverboards on, so they have to cut through trees, but they don't want to cut down all of the trees.
Exactly. It seems and they boast this whole book, they're oh, we're so environmentally friendly, we're sustainable, and blah, 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 and then she'll have a problem with cutting trees, and I'm okay, is this because you're environmentally friendly, or are you ew, blue working class, take me back to the city?
I think it was more environmentally friendly.
I think so too.
But
I like to think Tally is classist, though.
You would. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, so also a big thing here is Shay has a huge crush on David. That's introduced right when we meet Shay, David coming in to get her from that hill. She has a huge crush on David, and Tally's just like, okay, weird.
And in my head, David looks like an approachable H&M model with a bit of a gap between his teeth.
I can see that.
Okay,
I also picture David as, like, extremely hot.
Yeah.
like woodsy hot. And,
exactly.
like, we all know we'd fuck David.
I keep stopping myself from looking up who is playing him in the Netflix series.
Oh my god, it better be somebody good.
I don't want to look until we're done with this.
Oh my god, we could blind react to it and just not try to look at it at all.
That would be fun.
Okay, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Oh my god.
We are. The boss is like, you're here to work? Yay! So they give her, like, the trade job. Like
yeah, they're like, blah, blah, blah.
And they get lunch the next day, and everyone is hanging on to every word they said.
I think that's what Tally just loves, like, being the center of attention because she's never been it before.
Yep.
So that's why she's not hitting this pennant because she's like, oh my god, people love me here.
Yeah, and they get to work her whole job. She's pulling up the metal tracks from the railroad, and she's kind of having a good time with it.
Yeah, she's like, this isn't so bad.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of things, like, her and David start becoming pretty good friends.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you can read it and you're like, okay, well, obviously I get where this is going, but he kind of steals her away to a little cave.
Yeah, he's like, here's this little cave that crashed, and she's like, was there people inside? And he's like, I don't know, babe.
He's like, there's ghosts, but I'll protect you.
Yeah, and David immediately is like, I just feel like you're so different from these other people that come to the smoke, because, like, you're the only person who has ever made this trip by themselves. And she's like, holy shit, what, I am? And he's like, yeah, and that's why I can trust you. And I was like, no.
Oh, yeah. He's like, you know what? Let me tell you so many secrets that people who have lived here for years, I'm not going to tell them ever. I'm not a runaway. My parents are doctors. They operated on people.
Yeah.
I was actually born here.
He's like, cool, I have all this secrets I've never told anybody. I've known you for 3 days. Let me unload it on all of you.
And Tally's excited because it's trauma bonding time. And we know they're in it for the long
Yeah,
run.
so David's like, he admits he was born in the smoke, so he's not from an ugly town.
Mm-hmm.
He admits that his parents were doctors who worked on the pretty surgery, and they ran away and started the smoke. And that's when he tells them that they were, like, able to reverse the pretty surgery.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is, like, Tally's big moment of, like, oh, if I use the pendant, I'm, like, destroying people's lives.
Yep, so she just doesn't really use it, but also doesn't come up with any proactive solutions.
All she does is continue to sit on it.
So the next day, they're off to their little trade job again, and Tally's like, okay, maybe I could be working class. And David's like, by the way, I've noticed your little dainty hands are getting
your hands are so
scratched up.
blistery.
So here's some gloves that I put my heart and soul into making.
And Shay's pissed.
Oh my gosh, she's so mad. I felt so bad for Shay.
I know, and it was just, oh man, it was just, we never thought Shay would be this type of person, but then we were like, of course Shay would be this type of person.
Mm-hmm.
She's pissed that David likes Tally.
Exactly. They're cutting up some brush and shit that I don't know because I'm a pretty book girl. And Croy and Tally are partners, and this is where Croy mathematically is a genius.
Yeah.
He goes all beautiful mind Russell Crowe on him. And it's like, okay, so here's the thing. You said that you had maybe 15 packets altogether, but now you're saying that you have more, and 12 plus 6 plus 8 is 26. So you actually have this much more, and we're like, okay, let's calm down, man. And then Tally's all stressed out, and then Shay's all mad, and she talks to Shay, and she's like, they're having that classic miscommunication.
They're having this heart-to-heart where Shay's pissed at Tally. It's like, Shay, you should be mad at David.
Shay's like, you don't have to lie about this, I know. And Tally's like, oh my god, you know what? I know that you know, and Croy knows. And Shay's like, Croy? And Tally's like, David?
Yeah.
And then Shay does a really sad thing where she's like, look at my hands. And then her hands are just like beat up. And she's like, yeah, and David gave you the gloves. And you've been here like 2 days.
Yeah, and she's like, does he at least know about, like, the fact that you're wearing a necklace that some other boy gave to you? And Tally's like, I'm gonna tell him. And she's like, yeah, fucking right.
Yeah, she's like, convenient.
Yeah, she doesn't say that, but it's like, that's the tone it's set in.
Oh, absolutely.
And then, so they're having that whole thing. And I do want to touch on this, because I wrote this down, I put a star next to it, because I wanted to bring it up. Mm-hmm. I do like the way that Scott Westerfeld writes female characters, and that is so hard to find in a male author.
That is true. He does a really good job.
He does a really good job.
I can see, like, both of these sides of people. Also, it's like, I haven't been annoyed with them yet at all. And honestly, it's like, That's pretty hard to do. The only, like, pseudo female protagonist I feel like I liked was Bev in It, but then they have the fucking female orgy scene.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, that was like a real obvious.
God,
bummer.
could you imagine if like this series also ended with just a huge orgy? It doesn't, but that'd be funny.
That would be.
Every time we have a strong female character, we have to tear her down like 100 times.
Yeah. So then I don't know. Tally and David have another moment where. But how long has this girl been here? Because now he's like, meet my parents.
Yeah, I wrote like, whoa, David, a little fast there. Like they sneak away in the night. She's been there for maybe a week at this point. Like it's not long.
Yeah, and Tally's like, well, why do you like me more than Shay?
And she's like, because you're pretty. And she goes, what?
And then she's like, but my face. And he's like, well, you're pretty on the inside. And Tally's baffled by this.
And Tally's like, you think I'm prettier than Shay? And he's like, yeah, I like you. What the fuck is wrong with you? He doesn't say that, but it's implied.
Tally is so excited because she is getting gassed the fuck up. So she's like, why would I have my number one fan here. Why would I tell anyone?
Yeah, and so Tally's trying to like wrap her mind around like, why does this guy like me so much for my personality? What?
And here again, I cannot tell if it was just in Shay's head or if Shay and David had a thing. But she's like, why don't you like Shay? And he's like, because she changes her mind all the time. And he was upset that she didn't come the first time she said that she was going to come to the smoke. But honestly, maybe he's just like, I love my hometown.
Yeah, I think, honestly, the way I read it, it sounded like Shay had a crush on David, but David didn't have a crush on her. Mm-hmm. And that's how I read it. Because, like, even the way he's talking about her, it's not like, we tried, it didn't work out. Or I just like, oh, she came off too strong. He's just kind of like, Shay's just not really my type. And hasn't been, like, this entire time.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
Well,
anyway,
Shay doesn't even matter because Tally's about to meet his parents.
Tally's about to meet his parents, and then Tally's like, "Did Shay meet his parents? Like, what's going on?" And it's like, Tally, no, like he doesn't like Shay like that.
And these parents were past doctors, and 249 in my book, love this page because the doctors were on a special committee for morphological standards, and it was called
the Pretty Committee. Wow, click callback. Everything comes full circle.
I screamed.
I almost texted you, and then I was like, wait, I don't think Maggie's at this part yet, so we'll talk about it on the podcast. Yeah, and their house actually sounds really pretty. It's like a whole house, like, smashed into the wall of a mountain. It sounds really cool.
Yeah, I pictured that in, like, open, like, floor-to-ceiling windows.
Yeah, that's how I pictured it, too. And the biggest thing, Tally, like, meets Az and Maddie, which are David's parents' name, and she's like, why do you guys look alike?
That was really cute. I mean, not her being so fucking dumb. But it was just like, well, we passed down, like, things to David that are, like, the, like, family things, like big nose, and he's a part of us. And I was like, oh,
it's cute.
That was sweet.
But then, they have some tea, and Tally has to learn what tea is, because that's the thing she does.
Both what she's drinking and what she's about to get in terms of
Going back to it, the more we recount this, I'm like, Scott did a really good job of making Tally not know what things are, but, like, not sound like a really dumb bitch.
Yeah.
Like, what? Like, it's just very much like she's unfamiliar with these things.
Yeah, she's very socialist.
But she catches on pretty quick.
So the parents start talking about how they would change the uglies to pretties, and they were studying the new pretties, and they found that there were lesions in their brains, which are just basically like a clump of cells, but obviously interferes with how you think. And some of the pretties didn't have these lesions.
And that's when they find out that these lesions change pretty brains. And that's why everybody who's pretty just is so agreeable all the time.
Exactly. They're just submissive. And the people who don't have the lesions are, you guessed it, important government jobs like firefighters, wardens, doctors, politicians, and special circumstances.
And when I first wrote down, like, wow, police isn't included here. And then I was like, oh, it's because special circumstances is the police. Got it. Let's take it back.
Yeah.
But yeah, and Tally's just, like, trying to, like, wrap her head around this whole thing. Because she's like, oh my god, that makes so much sense. And I had no idea. fuck. And Talia was like, shit, I wanted that surgery my entire life. And, like, what does that mean? Like, and they're kind of talking to Talia about, like, we know there's a way to reverse it, and we've been trying to, like, kind of study it out here for a really long time, but, like, we haven't been able to find anything because we don't have the technology for it. We don't have the resources.
And how they started gaining people's trust in the smoke was they started taking a pill that turned them, or not turned them ugly, but kind of like reversed them back to the state of ugliness, which, I don't know, maybe if you take a pill and you start becoming ugly, maybe you start becoming smarter when you're ugly. The takeaway is beauty is not everything.
It's kind of what the book's about, yeah.
And page 260 is, like, really important because no one else in the smoke knows this besides Tally. And she asked David, she's like, well, why don't you tell people? Because obviously some uglies go back when they're done with this and they become pretties. And he's like, a lot of them wouldn't believe us, or if they did, they would go back to the city to try to rescue their friends, and eventually the city would find out what we were saying and would hunt us down.
Yeah.
Which kind of sucks. It's like, you know that these people, you can't tell them, and if they do go off, you're just like, well...
Just like, well, what can you do?
Bye. I guess I appreciated this time together.
Yeah, and so, they leave David's parents' house, and, Tally's brain is still spinning, and David's just, like, trying to give her a compliment, and she won't take it.
Yeah, it's a really sweet moment where he
so
says,
cute.
I think you're beautiful because of what's on the inside, and Tally begins to lecture him on vanity. He's like, I'm not programmed. I didn't grow up in a city. And she's like, it's not just culture, it's evolution. Homegirl, he is smarter than you. Listen to him.
Listen to him. He's also trying to flirt with you. Like, get it.
I laughed a lot at this because David said the scratches on her face is what made him interested. And she responds, that's crazy. Imperfect skin is a sign of a poor immune system. And it has sat with me for, like, ever. That was the biggest compliment I've gotten because I was born with perfect skin.
Yeah.
And I treat my body like shit,
yeah.
but I have a great immune system. So honestly, maybe Scott Westerfeld is onto something.
Oh man, who knows? But this like weird exchange of Tally refusing to say thanks ends with them kissing.
Yeah.
Which is cute.
Yeah, and then he, like, is holding her little heart necklace or pendant or whatever Dr. Cable gave her in her romantic goodbye. Yeah. And he's like, what about your necklace? And she's like, shh, let me show you something.
I know, yeah, and he's, like, he's been very accepting, because, like, even when she tried to bring it up to him earlier, he's like, oh, I saw that necklace, like, I don't care, because, like, I don't know, like, if that person shows up, they show up, but they're not here right now.
And she's just like, shh,
yeah, and
we're
she's
not going
like,
to get to that.
And yeah, and so then, Tally runs away and she throws the necklace in the fire.
Yeah. And it's like one of those moments where he's like, God, it's dramatic and hot just like you.
He didn't say that. He was just like, why'd you do that? And she's like, it just felt like the right thing to do.
I like to think David's always like, oh, Tally, and then just boops her on the nose. He's like, boop, you're so funny.
Haha, you're so cute and dumb. Let me teach you things.
And she falls asleep, and who shows up the next morning?
Special circumstances.
Oh, God.
And that's where we leave off with part 2.
Yep.
It's just special circumstances was there.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah.
That's that.
That's it.
She did it to herself.
Yeah, she fucked up. And we're going to find out more of why she fucked up in the next episode, which is going to be next week. But before we wrap this episode up...
We have a pretty fun top 5.
We always have fun top 5s. Let's not sell ourselves short.
That's fair.
So we have made a top 5 for...
Yep. The top 5 things that Tally should have done with the pendant besides throwing it in the fire.
Because that's clearly why special circumstances showed up, because she destroyed it.
Since our most inventive are at the bottom, since we kind of ran out of memory space in our brains,
yeah.
I think we should go 1 to 5.
Let's do it. Let's shake things up for this episode.
Okay.
Number 1, she should have just tied it to a bird. Tied to a bird and it'll fly away. Easy.
If you have the means to do it in the smoke, tie it to a missile. It'll get there faster.
Do they have missiles in the smoke?
I don't think so.
I don't think they do. If they had like a balloon or something, it could just float away.
Speaking of floating, number 2, we put Chuck in a river.
Chuck it in a river. Easy. It'll float downstream or upstream, depending on the river.
It might be faster than the bird.
Exactly. We don't know how fast the birds are in the future.
The river might have expedited shipping.
Number 3, hot one. Nothing. If she just held on to the pendant, couldn't get destroyed in signals of special circumstances.
Exactly, and if it's a cute pendant, like how I'm thinking, you might want it forever anyways.
Exactly, it's just like, just keep it in like a little like glass case so it can't get ruined.
Number 4, she should have given it to the trading post, because it's going to sit there forever.
And she probably could have gotten some nice stuff for it.
Exactly. It's like, here's this fancy piece of jewelry that is useless.
Give me 7 sleeping bags.
Exactly. Number 5, this was when our brains were on airplane mode, basically. But we said, very inventive, rent an Airbnb in the outskirts of town and leave it there. Give it to the homeowner.
And this thought exists that while the smoke, it has to be illegal, Airbnbs are allowed to happen still.
Exactly. Maybe take an Easter getaway with your love, David.
Do people go on vacations in this book? Like,
are there
we have
holidays?
no idea. I have no clue. Like, I remember in like the later part of this book, Tally I think talks about going to like the ocean with her family once.
Oh, she did.
Yeah, who knows?
Who knows?
But yeah, that's it for part 2.
Tune into part 3, and maybe there'll be a little Easter egg in there. Speaking of Easter, that you might find out there are holidays in this world.
Are there?
No, there's not. I just wanted to leave them on a cliffhanger.
As if the cliffhanger of special circumstances showing up isn't big enough.
No, it has to be a holiday.
Hey, listener, maybe there's holidays.
Maybe in part 3 it's Christmas.
We just fast forward. And they're like, man, wasn't it crazy when special circumstances showed up?
This is like the stupidest thing to me.
Well, listeners, we have fun here. But we're gonna take a break while we go and do episode 3, which is not episode 3, part 3.
Yeah.
Which is coming out a week from this episode. Mm-hmm. That's right, we're doing weekly episodes for this series, which we're really excited about.
Yeah, honestly, we're ripping through it pretty fast, and it's actually exciting to read, so we want to get it out before we forget.
You want to know what I've been thinking about? Like, it took us 14 click books to cover a year and a half, and we've already covered, like, months in just one book here.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just like, Scott Westerfeld uses his time well. He gets to the point he likes to move on, and that's what we love about him.
It's pretty brave that Lacey Harrison made the Click a time-traveling book as well.
Yes, time travel as it moves linearly.
She walked so Hermione Granger could get the time spinner and figure it out later.
We're on one today. I love it. Okay, well, listeners, if you're listening to us right this very moment, if you could just do us a really solid favor and rate us 5 stars, we would like that. I'm going to be honest, we'd really like that.
We'd really enjoy it.
We would really enjoy it. And tell a friend about us. Tell 2 friends if you want to.
We're almost to R-rated, 69 ratings on iTunes.
Yeah, if you act now, you could be the 69th rating on iTunes. And I think that's the note we have to leave it on. We're dying to get to 69 ratings on Yahweh Reddit. I've been Laura. That is...
And I'm Meggie.
And that is Meggie. And we're going to see you next week. I'm not going to see you. You're going to hear us next week. But we love you. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
You were just listening to an Audiomint podcast.